Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Austin Energy Green Building webinar. I'm so pleased that you could join us for this really important topic, affordable housing success stories. Before we get going, however, we do have a few announcements, so we'll start with those. And we'll be putting some links in the chat now, so look for the links in the chat. And our first announcement, our residential team is going to be updating the single family and multifamily ratings. Those are currently out for public input on the Speak Up Austin website. And that is open until this Thursday. So we need any comments by the end of the day on March 23rd, which is Thursday. So if you're interested in taking a look at what we're proposing there and giving us some feedback, we'd love to hear what you have to think. And those links will be in the chat. The AIA Austin Homes Tour 2023 is now accepting submissions. So if you're interested in being on the Homes Tour, please go to their website for more details and apply by April 6th. That's right around the corner. So love to see some green homes on that tour. Our Green by Design workshop is coming up around the corner too. It's going to be starting on April 11th. Learn to build, remodel, buy green homes, improve your energy and water efficiency, increase comfort, reduce maintenance. You can attend 1, 2, or all 3 sessions. They are registered for AIA continuing education if you haven't attended one in the last 3 years. So you can only get credit once every 3 years. And it is, these workshops are really geared at a lay audience. So if you have clients interested, it's a great opportunity to give them an overview of building a green home. Resource Recovery wants to hear people's thoughts about composting at apartments. So if you have any thoughts about composting at apartments, they also have a Speak Up Austin survey up right now. So get more details on the Speak Up Austin site for that. Our next seminar coming up in May will be on construction labor equity. We're lining up some great speakers for that, and we'll have more information on our website soon. I am also told that we may have some job listings and openings coming up soon, so keep checking the City of Austin Jobs website for that. This seminar has been submitted to AIA and GBCI for continuing education. We did get word just beforehand that AIA is approved, so we'll definitely have those AIA continuing education credits for you. You do need to attend the entire webinar for us to report those hours for you. All certificates will be emailed. A follow-up email is going to be sent out along with links to the recorded webinar and other resources, and that'll be coming probably a few days after today's presentation. We have the AIA quality assurance slide that we need to show you. And then we have our learning objectives for today. Now let's dive right in to the seminar. Successful affordable housing is sorely needed here in Austin, and it requires some creative design. It requires community collaboration and use of whole lots of different programs that might be available. And in this seminar, we've got 3 really great and different versions of affordable housing that are achieving ambitious goals in sustainability and providing that much needed housing in our community. I'll introduce our panelists now, and they can present these fantastic projects. We have Jason John Paul Haskins, who is the Director of Architecture at HUO Architects in Austin, Texas. He's also the 2023 Chair of AIA Austin's Design Voice. Jason's professional practice focuses on enacting and embodying solidarity, subsidiarity, and human dignity in the built environment. He brings a wide range of experience in socially and/or technically complex projects to his work. His expertise includes multifamily, mixed-use workplace, and institutional placemaking, participatory design, multidisciplinary planning, emerging technologies, and data-driven design play a significant role in his process. After Jason, we'll have Claire and Ken. So Claire Walpole is the staff architect at Austin Habitat for Humanity. She has held that role since its inception in 2013. She graduated from Louisiana State University College of Art and Design with a Bachelor of Architecture in 2001, licensed in Texas in 2006, and has over 20 years in the industry, including experience in architecture firms, AE firms, design build. Her time in nonprofit affordable housing has been the most fulfilling, and she believes that meaningful design, specifically sustainable practices, should not and cannot be relegated to the most luxurious homes, but must be an integral part of solving the affordable housing crisis in Austin. Ken Johnson is a partner at Michael Hsu Office of Architecture. Since joining the firm in 2014, Ken has overseen a range of both architecture and interior projects. Notable projects include the one he's presenting here today, Habitat for Humanity Row Homes, Plaza Saltillo, Home Slice North Loop, Academy Residence, 907 South Congress, and Uptown Sports, which recently just opened. Ken has overseen a host of the firm's custom residential projects and is a team leader managing firm standards. And last but certainly not least, we have Matt Beaton joining us from Nelsen Partners Austin office. He joined that office in 2015 and has led project teams for several affordable and market rate mixed use and multifamily projects, including a new mixed use residential building on North Lamar Boulevard, redevelopment of the RBJ Center senior apartments, and Chalmers Courts in East Austin. Previously, he worked for several years in Chicago, focusing on urban affordable and senior housing projects. Matt is actively involved in the local community, promoting affordable housing and sustainable urbanism in Austin. And I'm really thrilled to have all of them here. And so we'll get started. If you have any questions, be sure to use the Q&A window throughout the seminar, and we'll get those answered after the presentations. With that, I will turn things over to Jason.
Right. Hello, we're really excited to share this project with you. Tess, can I get the share activated for me, please? There we go. All right. So this is Roosevelt Gardens. This is a 40 unit permanent supportive housing development for HIV positive neighbors, developed and operated by Project Transitions. The building achieved a 5-star rating with the Austin Energy Green Building on a limited budget. In addition to the high energy efficiency, water use reduction, and resource conservation, the project really focused on affordability, equity, and wellness due to the population that it serves and the ethos of the organization. It also doubled the density on the site from the existing building while reducing impervious cover, and redeveloped a brownfield end-of-life apartment building. The project checks just so many boxes for the different priorities that are set forth by the city and the strategic housing blueprint, by housing advocacy groups, and everyone working on affordable housing. Starting off, it's deeply affordable, by which we mean it's below 30% MFI, which is the lowest band used in assessing and regulating affordability. Pretty much all of the residents have been experiencing chronic homelessness. It's supportive housing, which means that the pairs wraparound services with stable housing and increases the efficacy of both. We really focused on universal design and have accessibility way above the code minimums. I mentioned the sustainability and environmental responsibility concerns. That 5-star goal, which we achieved, was instrumental in making sure that we were on that priority. It's transit oriented. We have significantly reduced parking based on the requirements and access to some very good transit, as well as transportation options that the organization provides as well. We think it's a great representation of appropriate and sensitive densification in the urban core. And it redevelops substandard housing without causing displacement, and across the board is equity focused and proactively anti-discriminatory housing. So how was all that achieved? The biggest part was the vision and leadership of project transitions. And then added to that, the partnerships, both from the design and construction team, and then all of the diversity of funding sources, housing policies, and programs that we participated in. This is a sampling of those. One of the things that I appreciate about these programs is that the accountability that comes with them. It's not nearly enough to promise that you're going to do things. There are legal mechanisms to ensure compliance, but also, importantly, resources to help you actually achieve them if you mean well and if you ask for them. This is our alphabet soup on this project. The one that I want to focus on today is Affordability Unlocked, because it was instrumental in making this project happen. And this was actually the first contracted project under the program. It wasn't the first completed, but the first that started. One of the innovation credits that the project achieved through AEGB was the pilot credit called Affordability in Practice. I believe it was actually the first one to complete that. To earn this point, we wrote a white paper describing the program itself with a case study of how it was achieved on this project and information about how to apply it to other potential projects. If you're not familiar with Affordability Unlocked, it was an ordinance that the city adopted in 2019 after the city recognized how far behind we are in meeting the strategic housing blueprint goals for a number of units. In recognition of the worsening affordability crisis that has only gotten worse since 2019, and also recognition that the disaster we call the Land Development Code is a major contributor to increasing housing costs and inequality in the city. Affordability Unlocked also intended to increase the efficacy of the money that is spent on housing. This is an opt-in bonus program citywide that does not change base zoning. What it actually does is create a special permitted use, which is dependent upon long-term compliance with affordability minimums. These charts are probably a little small on the screen, but they are in the white paper, which should go out with on the follow-up email. And AGB has part of providing that is that it's available for reference. So some of the more technical details that goes into more. This is intended to be more of an overview. The program has two levels, type 1 and type 2, but the minimum requirement for type 1 is 50% of the units be affordable at or below 60% MFI. What exactly that means is a little bit beyond the scope of this discussion, but it's what we would call real affordability. 60% is when you're really making an impact beyond what we would refer to as workforce housing. This is definitely not a small token. To get to level 2, which gives you additional bonuses, on top of the 50%, you can either make most of those multi-bedroom units. You can increase the number of affordability, increase the depth of the affordability down to 30% MFI, or you can also get type 2 if you are within a quarter mile of an Imagine Austin corridor that is actually served by transit. I think of the program as having two main uses. First is to dovetail with the existing multifamily funding sources, such as the low-income housing tax credits or the city housing bonds, and stretch those dollars further. The second is to provide more options and creativity in greater density single-family housing and for creating affordable ownership. The first one has just worked beautifully. All of the projects are using it. It's really making a huge impact. The second one, we're still trying to figure out how to make work. I think there's a couple of good examples, but there's still a lot that can be done with the program that's yet to be discovered. It achieves the benefits by waiving or revising certain portions of the zoning limits. Most importantly, removing explicit density restrictions for units per acre or site area per unit, allowing additional height, reducing minimum parking counts to only the accessible spaces that would be required were it fully parked. And probably the biggest one for this particular project, and one of the biggest ones across the board, is removing compatibility. One of the biggest takeaways from our study on this site, and which is really borne out on the other sites that we've applied it to, is that while these can be significant changes, we usually don't end up needing all of them to make what otherwise would be an impossible project actually pencil out. Now, you may have seen in the news last week that there is a group suing to invalidate this program. There are no shortage of moral and logical failings in their arguments. For example, I already mentioned that this does not rezone properties or modify zoning districts. It is a separate use. Now, there are valid concerns about displacement and gentrification in our neighborhoods, about the exploitation of renters by landlords that is enshrined in our state laws. But it is incorrect to say that the bonuses granted through Affordability Unlocked are the problem here. The fact is, requiring 50% affordable units and a land use restrictive agreement that locks those in for 40 years is entirely unpalatable to the kind of exploitative developers who just want to build and flip substandard market rate apartments. So it's a little disingenuous and prejudicial to present this as homeowners versus developers, as we'll see. First, that notion encodes the rampant belief that renters, poor people, and minorities are somehow subhuman. If you've ever been to a neighborhood planning meeting or a hearing on affordable housing, then you've heard the rhetoric from people all over the political spectrum. So we have to repeat in our practice a lot, home ownership does not impart nor prove moral superiority, and renters are people too. Instead, let me introduce you to the kind of people who are able to use Affordability Unlocked and who it's actually benefiting. Project Transitions is the only direct provider of housing for people living with HIV in Central Texas. They formed in 1986 in response to the AIDS epidemic and started providing hospice care. As treatment and awareness improved, they were able to move into providing supportive and long-term housing for people who are now living with HIV. As of 2018, there were over 1,500 people with HIV in Central Texas who did not have stable housing. That's the last time that they did a full survey. Based on analysis in 2020, they believed it was closer to 2,000. So it's a huge, huge need. And it's all the more important because without stable housing, managing a chronic illness is so much more difficult. Keeping appointments, routine visits, specialty visits, maintaining medication schedules, it's all very, very difficult when you're just in survival mode and you can't get to a maintenance and wellness mindset. The image on the left is an actual image of the bag of an unhoused person's HIV medication when they were moving into Project Transitions. The organization asks, do you have your medication? And this is what they showed them. Project Transitions had been operating the old Roosevelt Gardens for many years. The building was built in I believe the late 50s, early 60s, and was well past the end of its life. So the project to redevelop the site was conceived with the goal of increasing the occupancy of the number of people they could serve. They were an amazing organization to work with, really an ideal client, tenacious but flexible through a very difficult process. Which included construction at the heart of the pandemic and having to purchase wood right at the historic peak. Through all of that, they kept the residents and those they serve as top priority throughout, and I think that really shows in the final result. Here's an aerial view of the property before development. In addition to the 60-year-old apartment building with 6-foot ceilings and made out of asbestos, more than half of the site is a parking lot that was never even half full. So the goal was to double the number of residents and greatly increase the service space available. Project Transitions, as I said, have been in this neighborhood since the 1980s and had a great working relationship with the majority of the long-term residents. They reached out early in the process to get feedback and to discuss the project. Unfortunately, a vocal minority of the neighbors opposed the redevelopment and wanted to keep the poor people out of what they saw as their neighborhood. Never mind that they were already living in this building in substandard conditions. It's amazing the things that you hear people say in these meetings. The biggest hurdle for this project was so-called compatibility, which I think should truthfully be called compatibigotry. These rules mean that single-family houses impose restrictions on neighboring properties at 320 feet away, and they are one of the strongest forces for housing and affordability, discrimination and segregation, and perpetuating income inequality in our city. As it happens, the current compatibigotry standards meant that even the existing building could not be rebuilt. The opponent's response? Well, why not just build single-family homes? So while we sought out input from the neighbors and we were able to incorporate some comments, the idea of evicting the residents was just really not an option that the neighborhood wanted wasn't really an option. And now if you look at this view of the neighborhood, there are actually 7 properties in this view which are supposedly incompatible with the neighborhood, even though they have been there for more than half a century. You'd think that would make them part of the character of the neighborhood, but I guess not in the mind of the entitled homeowners. Here is what the buildable area by right of the zoning base district should be. This is essentially two single family or SF3 lots next to each other. It was already zoned MF3. And here's what the compatibility restrictions do to that potential volume. In this case, the buildable volume was reduced by 36%. And I should also mention that the property to the north was changed to MF3 during the design process, but the existence of the house would, on that lot would still have triggered compatibility. When the house was demolished during our construction, it would have been too late to get back the area that was lost. Here's the existing building compared to the compatibility limits. It sticks out on both sides and the back. And this only provides 20 units as they were using it. It was originally 22, and they converted 2 of the units to the office and lounge, and that's what they were using as the support space and the amenity space. We did try very hard to find ways to squeeze the desired number of units into the compatibility envelope. And this is sort of technically 40 units, as long as you don't want daylight in the units or the courtyard, which is the only thing that the residents actually liked about the old building. It decreases the security in a number of ways, and really, even for any housing, not having windows is just a non-starter. But when you look at the literature about the importance of daylight and access to nature in healing for this community, there was no way to make this work. This we actually did after the fact, just out of curiosity. So we took the final design and kind of modified it to fit within and try to squeeze every unit out. And by decreasing the service spaces available and decreasing some of the other features, we were able to get up to 26, which is still short of the goal. So now compare the Affordability Unlocked envelope on this site to the compatibility envelope to the Affordability Type 2 envelope. Which through the height increases and through the modifications to the setbacks becomes a 67% increase in the buildable volume. I'm talking about volume here because it takes more into account than just the area. It has, as we tried many different iterations, the volume really is what allows you to have the quality of the units and reinforce the dignity of the housing. This is a version of the plan that actually uses the entire height bonus, which would allow us to go up to 4 stories in this case, again, because we are providing 100% affordable, all at 30% MFI. And we could have gotten up to 60 something units in this plan, but that's not what was appropriate for the site, not what was appropriate for the program, not what was balanced out by the funding that was available, the parking ratio they knew they wanted. So basically what Affordability Unlocked allowed us to do is to build the correct building for the residents and for the organization, what they can afford, what they can manage, what provides the best service, the best quality of life for the residents. We didn't have to worry at the end of the day about meeting arbitrary numbers. For example, we would be allowed by right 23 units, and you could build the same building with 23 large units, or really normal size 2-bedroom units. But because what's appropriate for this population is very carefully tuned micro units, we were able to fit 40 in what was the same area. We ended up only using 18 inches of the additional height that's allowed, except for the compatibility. And really that was just to provide the 12-12 pitch, which I think really helps give this a domestic character. And it is actually almost humorous how much worse the building looks with lower pitch in this design. We reduced the parking spaces to 14, and 4 of which are accessible, with an option for another 2 to be made accessible. That was based on the ratio they had before, because they knew who their current residents had cars. They doubled that and then added a couple of spaces for the increased frequency of off-site visiting service care providers coming to the site. Obviously, that's not going to work for everybody, but in this case, it allowed us to worry about what was appropriate and the most beneficial to the residents. So with all of that sorted out, with no rezoning required and no other cases, we were able to proceed with construction. All of the residents were moved together to another building. And then, as I mentioned, this was built during the least ideal time during the pandemic. And really it was the collaboration of the team and the flexibility that really made this happen. Also having the strong goals that we set out and things like the AGB worksheet to go back to as principles really helped in the decision-making process and some difficult decisions. So again, here's the arrow before, oops, and here's after. We were able to incorporate many comments from the neighbors. And I really like how this view shows the rhythm of the roofs, breaking up the massing and modulating the scale of the building. So it's more responsive to the other multifamily behind us, and then towards the street, it fingers out into this more domestic scale. Plus the additional green. There's a front yard instead of a parking lot. And overall, there's less impervious cover and less water leaving the site than there was before, which was a major issue. Also note that the solar-ready areas are naturally highlighted in the aerial view. So we had our ribbon cutting and residents started moving in last fall. All of the residents who were here before were able to move back in pretty much right away. And then the other half of the units have been filled up. There is currently one unit not occupied and it's already claimed. These are some of the service areas that we provided for classes and social interaction. There are a variety of amenities available. On the left is the wellness room, which is set up for telehealth and guided and self-directed wellness activities. The commercial kitchen is set up for food pantry distribution. There are also groups that come in and cook meals for the residents in what ended up being a full commercial kitchen. On the AGB side of things, it's probably true of most 5-star AGB projects, but we really engaged every part of the rating system. One of the things we're proudest of on this is that there were no heroic big ticket sustainability features. There was no budget for that. The success came from hundreds of small incremental decisions reinforcing each other, all in the favor of the residents' quality of life and the broader health of our community and our planet. We used the accountability of the system to help guarantee that the owner got what they paid for in terms of energy and water savings, since the organization pays all the utilities. And indoor environmental health was also a major priority since the residents have a variety of health concerns. Durable materials was a major priority as well. Sometimes that aligned with the material and resource priorities, sometimes it didn't. But what we really wanted to do, the main kind of mindset for the material aspect was to eliminate items that most standard market rate multifamily consider consumable. So no carpet, no laminate, things that get damaged easily. Durability and reducing replacement and landfill was the goal with the materials. We have the covered bike parking here on the left, which is a natural part of the arrival sequence, one of everybody's favorite AGB requirements. And then the trees in the front yard there were originally paved, and the parking lot was paved up to their trunks. So we took a risk to create a tree care plan to revive them, and they took off wonderfully. Unfortunately, the picture was taken right before they started sprouting this year. And then one of the main features of the building is the courtyard, which I said was the one thing that the residents liked about the old building. And so we retained that, actually enlarged it a little bit, and that provides that connection to nature and is really the social heart of the community, which will only increase as everything kind of grows in and the residents continue. They've already started gardening in the courtyard, in the south yard, and on the balconies as well, which is what was intended and was a big part of their social life before. So we're able to provide spaces for that to continue with that connection to nature and positive distractors. So that is my time. As I mentioned, it was the partnerships and collaboration that really made this project happen. So in with crediting the entire team, it was a very collaborative process. Going through the AGB rating system really helped build that collaboration. It was already in there, but reinforced and gave us a common vision that we were able to really provide something that is so desperately needed in our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Fantastic project. With that, we will turn it over now to Claire and Ken to present the Habitat project.
Great. Hi, I am Claire Walpole, the staff architect for Austin Habitat for Humanity, and this project is our Miller Row homes. First off, Habitat's mission is seeking to put God's love into action, and Austin Habitat for Humanity brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope, and our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. At Austin Habitat, we have a high commitment to performance, construction, and green building. While our goal is never to gain a specific number of stars or specific awards, our main goal is to produce a home that is durable and affordable long term. When we are making decisions about how efficient something needs to be, we have to really evaluate the investment we make sure that it will be more usable and comfortable and cost efficient as a home. And sometimes that means a little more insulation versus an expensive piece of equipment. But that is always part of our decision-making process. This project is Austin Energy Green Build 4 stars, which is a typical rating for ours. It's kind of our natural place to land for our our green design. We did have a few challenges in reaching our efficiency goals on this one, including air sealing of a party wall. It's just a difficult construction, including the fire rating and the air sealing at the same time. And these were very narrow individual lots, so the utility placement was not consolidated for the project. And as we've been moving through this real estate and development climate in Austin, we knew that we had to make some kind of move to develop a denser product. Since Miller is one of the only places in Austin that allows townhomes by right, our partnership with Catalyst was essential in making this type of project work for us. And one of the major factors for design was our desire to create family housing. While we absolutely need housing for individuals in small households in Austin, we feel the affordable family housing is increasingly difficult to find. So we are committed to creating as many units for families as we can, in as many ways as we can, especially using the missing middle typologies. This site plan shows our 3 and 4 bedroom units. And while those party walls were difficult to air seal, they also have the added benefit of fully insulating that building on both sides. And we are really looking forward to seeing how that impacts the overall efficiency of those units specifically. Ken?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That was awesome. I want to say that projects like this do take a big team, like Jason said, and Habitat being having design, construction, and ownership all under one roof and accomplishing these goals is so impressive. The feedback that we got working with Claire and then with the Austin and Billy on site, the superintendents who had a background in custom residential housing, contributed to solving a lot of the design challenges and achieving the designs that we were looking for. And so I wanted to talk about how these fit into our firm's design ethos, which is that design is for everyone. And so you can see an example here, and I just love all the after photos with the families standing on the individual porches, and that was really the intent for these 11 homes. While they are attached single family, which is a style of home that we're not especially used to in Austin, it's a necessity, especially for something as close to as many amenities as this. There's a park right across the street. There's an HEB a block away. It's just elementary, middle schools right around the corner. It's a really great place to live, and offering that opportunity to as many families as possible is amazing. And so you can see how we gave the families a chance to identify each of their individual units as you walk up to, what could be confused for kind of one larger single unit with their each individual choices for the front porch. And so we achieve this. We like to approach each of these projects with the same commitment to design rigor at any scale and any budget. So just because this is labeled as affordable housing doesn't mean that we're going to spend any less time or any less effort looking for design solutions that best solve the problem and fit the budget. So we adjust the constraints and the inputs based on the goal, and then work as hard as we can to achieve those. And we believe that through that, we believe that design should be both innovative and achievable. And so we're very seldom will we rest on what we think is kind of a conventional or an easy solution. We think that we will push hard to find a unique and still budget friendly, but exciting option to challenge the conventions of design. And through that, we work and design with empathy. We try and put ourselves in the shoes of the folks that are going to be living here and imagine what's important to them. Is it a facade detail or the shape of the building on the outside maybe, but is it a nice front door and a wonderful living room to walk into and a place to raise your family? So try and weigh all those things with what is inevitable on any project to have a limited budget. And so in addition to our commitment for design being for everyone, we have some design excellence, sustainable commitments as well that we apply to our projects, kind of above and beyond the quantitative measures of solar ready and Energy Star and low flow fixtures and low VLC finishes. So we're committed to nurturing occupants through a sensorial experience, and that comes down to the touch points of a home. That's the pieces of the home that you see every day, that you walk through, that you experience. How do we, place an importance and a reverence on those elements that are going to be, otherwise kind of just pass through moments, but are so important to someone's everyday experience. And then building upon that, we challenge ourselves to seek deep purpose in material selection. And so that doesn't always mean having a material that's the most expensive or the most exotic or most difficult to obtain. On this project, I think that it's a really wonderful example of somewhat utilitarian, simple materials, but applied and installed in a really creative way. And we're, I can't say this enough good things about the Habitat team and their commitment to pushing quality for themselves and for their subcontractors. And I think that, this is an example of a really good team coming together to create a really good product. And it hopefully shows, and I believe it competes with any of the other design options available in Miller, and would not be immediately identified as a low-income housing project. So you can see here we have some examples of the different tile entryways, some cementitious board applied and intermingled with some larger wood trim and some really wonderful steel awnings that indicate the sense of arrival at home. And we're fortunate to be aligned with Habitat and also with Miller's design principles of elevating patios above the sidewalk and selecting materials that are durable, low maintenance, and contribute to a home that is focused on longevity and resilience. We want, since these are all individually owned, individual families owning them, it's a huge goal, as Claire said, to create a place that's as low cost as possible to run and maintain, and somewhere that they can hopefully thrive for a long time. And if they are to move on, that it will be a very durable, very long-standing home for the next family. So as we're walking down that touches into the third sustainable commitment is that we design spaces that will thrive in any future. And so we're uncertain what the future may bring, especially now, but the best we can do is concentrate our efforts on durable and known building methods and materials as high quality as can be afforded within the budget. This is one of my favorite spots in the upper bedrooms. We were able to, these are stick frame structures, and we thought, here's an opportunity to have a little bit of fun, and so we selected a window that would slip up in between the trusses and give almost a little clear story moment. And so while these are not exotic high ceiling homes by any means, but we like to have a little bit of whimsy and fun when we design, and this is no exception. And in a couple more slides, you'll see what this window is looking out on, and it's pretty fantastic. Yeah, there it is. And the fourth principle that we hold ourselves to is to meaningfully contribute to the public realm. And so in this case, we're done a huge favor by the location of the site in Miller, where we're right across from a street and one of the three amazing art installations along Miller. But then, also by their commitment to, like I said, raising the front porches and having a way in the deep, sidewalk and bike trail, and the requirement for plantings and trees along there. So it really encourages the neighborhood interaction and creates a sense of community, both within the 11 homeowners, but then kind of anyone that's walking around this part of the community, over to the HEB or to the Jordan next door, which is done by Jason's firm as well. So it's a really beautiful little community that's being created over here. And so we had a lot of contributors on this project, and we're able to leverage some of our connections and some of Habitat's connections to create this design. And that's where the effort and the rigor comes in. We were able to get in seeking discounts, we were able to get all of the tiles donated. We asked for whatever was laying around the back room of the warehouse, what can we work with, and the tile manufacturer said, whatever you want, it's a great project, come in, pick something out, let's have something that the families will like, and we'll cover it. Same with the cabinets inside. The Habitat for Humanity team found liquidated, a selection of cabinets were being liquidated, and we were able to piece together 11 full kitchens that that were consistent with our designs from the cabinets available. And so all of this contributes to keeping the costs low for the families that are moving in, and creates just a wonderful experience for them moving forward. So the rest of the team rounding it out was TBG Landscape Architects, MJ Structures, and then the beautiful photos were by Chase Daniels, local. So we're so fortunate to have been selected by Austin Habitat to design this project, and we look forward to hopefully this acting as a beacon to inspire other folks to take chances with affordable housing and stretch their designs in ways that they hadn't thought were possible. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ken and Claire. Just another reminder, if you have questions as we go, please remember to use that Q&A box and put them in there. But without further ado, we will move on to Matt to present the Chalmers project.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. This is the Chalmers Courts development that we've teamed up with the Housing Authority of the City of Austin and our development partners at Carlton Development out of Dallas. They came to us to help them revision a lot of their original public housing projects throughout the city. And I don't know if everyone's familiar with the history of Chalmers and the history of the public housing in Austin in general, but it's actually pretty fascinating. It's actually either the oldest or one of the oldest first public housing projects in America. When LBJ was a senator in Texas under FDR in the late 30s, as part of the New Deal, public housing was, really kind of a new and in the vanguard of the housing crisis back then, and an idea to put people to work, and an idea to put provide housing for people that were out of work or for low income people. So LBJ in his kind of foresight, like, worked with FDR to get public housing to Austin back in the 30s. So Chalmers Courts, Rosewood Courts, and Santa Rita Courts, all in East Austin, were among the nation's first public housing projects, and they were all built in between 1937 and 1939. And interestingly enough, they were all racially segregated. So Chalmers, Santa Rita, and Rosewood were all kind of developed for different racial groups, which, fortunately now we don't do that anymore, but that's kind of the legacy of each of these sites. So this is shows Chalmers as part of a much larger effort by the Housing Authority to revitalize and renovate and provide and to maximize the amount of affordable housing amongst their properties that they already own. So that's been a great challenge and a great opportunity to work with them to try to realize that vision. I mean, these are great old buildings that were built in the late 30s again, and they were pretty modern. They were very modern and for their time, and progressive for their time. Right now they don't meet accessibility standards. They have 8-foot ceilings. They have cinder block walls, so you can't add any pictures or put anything on the walls. There's no central heat or air, so people have to kind of move window units around their apartment during the summer, depending on which room they're sleeping in at the time, or the families all have to sleep in the living room. So there's a number of issues which it's where we are respective of the history of these projects, but we also realize the great need, and the Housing Authority realized the great need to provide modernized housing and increased numbers of housing for people that are increasingly beginning to get or are getting displaced out of East Austin and Austin in general pretty quickly. So it's kind of a crisis moment we're in, and so we wanted to make sure that we kind of heeded the call and tried to work with what we had and respect the history, but also kind of move forward and do what we could to provide the modern housing. So we had a couple of design principles moving into this project. We wanted to provide a secure home for the families. As Jason mentioned earlier in his presentation, natural light is very important to make sure everybody had ample access to space and light. So we didn't want to just build, tower blocks in a concrete urban setting. We wanted to make sure there's still outdoor space. As you can see in this bottom photo, the original buildings were 1 and 2 stories centered around ample green spaces. We wanted to maintain some of that open space, or a lot of that open space, because the residents really liked that. It was a good benefit for them. We want to create amenity spaces for all ages, for seniors, for teenagers, for children, for families, for singles, and for the HACA partners. So HACA partners with a lot of people in the neighborhood, groups in the neighborhood, like the Boys and Girls Club and others that come in and provide after school care. They provide social services. They provide job placement and job training activities for the residents. So we wanted to make sure there was space for that to happen. We wanted to create an active street edge. I mean, everybody knows East Austin is quickly becoming urbanized, and we heard this from the residents. Actually, this wasn't something that we as architects or the Housing Authority decided. We met with the residents several times, got to know them, and became friends with them, and heard what they had to say. And one of the main things we heard from them was that they didn't want to feel like they were stigmatized, in the projects. They wanted to feel like they were part of the fabric of what East Austin was becoming, which is a pretty urban, 4- and 5-story buildings, street edge. They wanted to make sure that when people are kind of walking through East Austin, they don't get point at Chalmers and say that's where the poor people live. They wanted to feel like they are, and rightly so, they wanted to feel like they were just part of the urban fabric that's coming. So we listened to that, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to hit those street edges and become part of that fabric. And we'll talk about how Affordability Unlocked really helped us do that. We wanted to retain the many protected and heritage trees that were on site. There's some gorgeous trees out there and some gorgeous green spaces that we wanted to weave our buildings through and around and make sure that we respected and kept those heritage trees in place. We wanted to create large active courtyards for the amenities. Like I said, open space was really important because of the number of families that are living here, and just because it's a great thing for humans to live next to green space. And we wanted to provide a welcoming atmosphere, not only for the residents, but for the neighbors. Another thing that we talked to the residents about and what we heard from them about is that there were varying opinions on this, but the residents didn't really want to feel like they were in a fortress or in a gated community, which is, it may be counterintuitive, but they really want to have the neighbors and the East Austin people in general be able to wander through the site, to walk through the site, and vice versa, just so that there's just no delineation between kind of public and private space, especially on the street frontage and on the main entries. And we'll talk about how we accomplish some of that in a second. So here's the site, the three white boxes. This is a little dated map. I mean, there's probably twice as many developments going on now as there were when this was originally created. But, one aspect of sustainability that I believe in, that we believe in, is that, urbanism is one of the most sustainable things you can do to place a building in an existing urban space with walkable amenities, with access to transit. This runs right along. This is right catty corner to the Plaza Saltillo Red Line station. It's accessed to 2 bus lines, many bike lanes, the main bike lane, the Lance Armstrong Parkway that runs east and west along there. So the connection to the city is pretty unparalleled on this site. We wanted to make sure that was that was a big aspect to our success with AEGB and just the success of the project overall. This is the project here. It happened in 3 phases from, I think we started in 2017, and we're currently building out the Chalmers West, which is the 3rd phase right now. So if you go there now, it's about half done. So in 2017, we built Chalmers South, and this was before Affordability Unlocked. So even before that ordinance came through, we were able to get this site rezoned and work with the city to reduce the parking. So we have, so I guess back up. So the original Chalmers was on these 2 blocks right here. This is Haka owned property that had a clinic building on it that we demolished. The original site had about 140 units on it, and the full build out will now have 403 units. So we've more than doubled, almost tripled the amount of affordable housing on this site, which we're really proud of. But the basic idea of the plan was, you can see all the heritage trees in kind of dark green here that we designed the buildings around. Each site each building is centered around a central courtyard. We tried to break up our parking into smaller chunks so that we could have some uninterrupted green space on each block. So Chalmers South was first. We have this U-shaped building around this courtyard. Chalmers East was second. Again, there's, and then what's unique about Chalmers East is we retained 2 of the existing buildings and converted those into a dental and a medical clinic for the residents and for the neighborhood, and then built the rest of the buildings around this courtyard. And then Chalmers West is being built again, the same way, but on Chalmers or on 4th and Kamal, we're going to actually have some small retail, and we're trying to find some partners with the housing authority that could be retail that could actually serve the residents in that corner, and that's right across the way from Plaza Saltillo. So one of the ways that we listened to the residents and talked about inviting the neighborhood in while also creating a sense of ownership and community with the residents is the Chalmers Greenway, which you can see right here. The city was great in working with us. We kind of walked in and were nervous. We wanted to actually take a block of Chalmers Avenue and abandon it and give it over to the housing authority for a multimodal bike lane and a connected pedestrian way between east and west, and keep cars out of it. So we kind of walked into the city nervously asking for that, thinking we'd get a lot of pushback. They were actually really helpful and enthusiastic and supportive of that idea. So we were successful in turning this into this greenway. So if you go there now, this is where the construction staging is, but hopefully in 6 months to a year, you'll see this cleaned out. in this beautiful kind of tree-lined bikeway and walkway. And this actually connects through East Side Station north of 4th Street and then connects to the bikeway along 5th Street. So it'll become an integral part of the bike network in East Austin. So really happy for that too. So just trying to go. So this is Chalmers South. I'm going to go a little quicker because I know we're running out of time. So again, there's 90, there's 87 units here. We ended up getting it up to about 90, 95 at the end, but yeah, C shapes. And we try to break the building apart into masses too. And so instead of just building a C-shaped mass, we tried to carve out for what we carved out for heritage trees, for breezeways. These are all exterior breezeways. We wanted to keep air movement through and light and fresh air through and access to views all the way throughout. So you'll see that in all the projects. Instead of, we always try to find a way to carve out the masses to kind of respect what's going on the site. This is Chalmers East. You can see the existing buildings here. And then the kind of a first floor amenity space here. Right now, this houses the Boys and Girls Club in this corner. And then this is West. This is a standalone. This is going to be kind of the flagship amenities for Chalmers, downtown Chalmers here at this corner. And this will have the Boys and Girls Club. It'll have art rooms, classrooms, spaces for service providers, and all kinds of fun stuff for the Chalmers residents. And it's sitting prominently right there on the corner. So specifically for AEGB and for we've been partners with AEGB throughout this process. For South, we got a 2-star rating. For East, we got a 3-star rating, and we're hoping for a 3-star rating on West. We're working through that right now. But a big part of how we got there was, again, it's urban site. I think kind of like some of the other presenters were saying, Ken and Claire and Jason were saying the same thing, where the place where you put your building matters a lot, and that can really count a lot towards sustainability just by nature of its connectivity to other things and its contribution to the public realm, as Ken said. So I think this is a really strong point for our project. When we were able to get full solar on all the buildings for South and East so far. We're hoping for West. We've got solar ready on West. We're working with Lighthouse Solar to work out a program for West that can provide PV panels for that as well. We're producing more power than the building needs from a design standpoint. We are tracking that in real time, so we'll have more data on that in the next year or two to see how things are really performing. But this is a great example of how distributed solar over a large project like this can really benefit a project. I mean, even when we're talking about it during development, we're working with limited budget, limited constraints. We don't want to add a lot of bells and whistles that don't really contribute to the well-being of the residents just to get points. But, this one actually turned out to be a really healthy ROI for the investment. I think, first of all, it lowers the utility bills of the residents. And second of all, it paid itself back within 4 or 5 years. I think the projected ROI was 4.5 years, if I remember correctly. So it's a big deal. It's especially when you're talking about these buildings that kind of hang on a knife edge of being affordable to be built or not. When you're working with not-for-profits, you're working with low-income housing tax credits, you're working with funds from the city. Every dollar counts. Just because the housing authority is a long-term owner, they have a long-term interest in the operation of this building. So this really did push it over the edge to an economic and green solution. So a lot of times the conventional wisdom is those things work against each other, but in this case, it's really kind of a win-win. Building performance. This is something that's interesting to talk about. It'd be great to have some more talks, AEGB talks about this later. But when we're looking at our building performance and how they perform over baseline, the South, East, and West are all basically the same envelope, same building type. It's basically just stucco with R20 insulation. It's nothing fancy. We're just basically building to code and doing a lot of other things, but we couldn't really afford to do anything really above and beyond that. We performed in the low 20s to mid 20s above baseline for South and East, but in West we are 18% above baseline, and this would actually say 2018 IEC instead of 2015 IEC, and I think that's probably because the codes are getting stricter And so if you build the same kind of building year after year, with the codes becoming more strict, which they should be, you're going to see less and less of a performance bump by doing the same old thing. So that's telling us that in the future we need to start looking at more things that we can do to increase our efficiency even more. So yeah, I mean, we did a lot of the normal things like LED lighting, light pollution reduction. One thing we did get to do on this project was the teal system, which is a centralized hot water boiler system. And that was just because it is a spread out site with multiple buildings. That made sense. We have a hot water loop that runs through the site, which actually really outperforms a traditional water heater system in how it consumes energy, lifespan, total cost. I mean, it's a high first cost, but it's, again, as a long-term owner, over the life cycle analysis of this project, it's going to be a cost savings as well as a higher efficiency solution. Construction waste diversion, yeah, we're doing all that stuff, but I think south and east were good examples. We're working with on west as well. A vast majority of our construction waste was diverted. So I guess, talked about lessons learned and main takeaways. We've been working with on this for several years now, and we kind of try to do a little bit better every time we push one of these phases out. As I was saying before, since we're not seeing as much of a return for the energy performance, we're starting to look into continuous insulation. Even though it's not, you can do an energy model and prove that you don't need it. The codes are probably going to start changing, and that's going to become less and less of a possibility. So providing a little bit more insulation, a little bit more robust envelope could help us a bit. And we're starting to look at more early stage analysis, looking at window wall ratios, doing some early iterations and energy modeling. Typically, we do an energy model. Just the reality of the game is that we do an energy model sort of because we have to. We get it spit out, but we don't use it as an iterative tool. We haven't been, but that's something that's changing in our practice. And then additional commissioning, just so that we can understand how these projects really perform in the real world. It's one thing to do your worksheets and get stars for EGB, and that's all great, but we're really interested in what the data really is, and we're going to be tracking this with the Housing Authority over the next few years to see how things are really functioning and how we can do better in our future projects, which is Rosewood Courts and Santa Rita Courts are the next projects that we're collaborating on with the Housing Authority. So that's pretty much it. So we did have a lot of great partners. Like I said, the Housing Authority, and then Carleton Development. We had TWG Landscape for our landscapes, and then PHA, MEP, and Connect Structural out of Dallas. So it was a great team. We've been working with the same team all the way through all these phases for 5 to 6 years now. So it's been great, and I'm glad to be able to share this with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Right, we can move to the Q&A portion of the session, and we've got some great questions in here. I'm going to come to Ken and Claire. We had a question about whether and how the project addresses the city's accessibility requirements. So you've got the design requirements to get those porches up off the street. So,
right, that project has an alley-loaded parking in the back, so all of the visitability was done from the rear, and there are no bedrooms on the first floor, so those didn't have to be accessible.
This is also for you guys. Did you find any resistance from the future homeowners regarding the houses not being standalone?
Not really. There are such amazing amenities in Miller that these homes were sold pretty quickly to families with 80% MFI. There are some clients in our pipeline that chose to buy one of our single-family detached homes in our neighborhood in Northeast Austin. Some of them because they wanted a private yard and some because they wanted to live in a different location. But we were really excited to be able to offer the row homes as a new option for our homeowners.
Do you think it's something you'd do again?
Absolutely. And we are. We're working actually with Hatch, Illinois again and doing some townhomes and stacked apartment type ownership buildings.
Okay. One more question for you guys while I have you. Who on the team sought out the material donations, and was that difficult, time consuming? How did that work?
Austin Habitat was offered the cabinets, and we found a way to use those. We also get certain appliances donated through Habitat for Humanity International. We don't typically rely on donations to meet our affordability goals, but we'll absolutely use them if they make sense. And Ken can talk about how it was to get the tile.
Yeah, it was fun because we've established relationships with, you know, a lot of our vendors, from lighting to tile to finishes. And this was an example where we were like, you know, let's just start talking to folks, because we've talked about donations in the past. So it wasn't a kind of a wide search effort, more of just who do we like working with and do they want to work with us more? And we found since then, whenever there is, we've had one supplier in particular, when they had a surplus of material and they reached out to us to say, are you working on any nonprofit projects? We have X amount of material. Can you use it, please? So it's really nice to start building that reputation.
Nice. All right, Jason, you know I'm coming to you now. We got a question for you on the pitched roofs. Are those designed to be ready for solar panels? Is there any plan to think about PV in the future at Roosevelt Gardens?
Yes, and the PT was very interested in doing that. We've got so the 1212 actually works out. We did the modeling, and you know, obviously our orientation is dictated by the lot, fitting on the lot, but it actually works out really, really ideally. So yeah, on those pitched roofs, all of the vents, everything on the roof is on the north facing side. On the big shed roof in the back, which still faces west and is actually very well oriented, that everything's right up at the top, so the whole area is available. We weren't able to do it as part of the funding. It mostly has to do with just the mechanisms that are the complicated mechanisms that are required to get something like this funded. And also, they are working on their second building, breaking ground on Thursday, in fact, for Burnett Place, that I think Ken's working on. And so that is their current priority. But they very much have a goal to go back, hopefully for both, if they can figure out the right combination of grants and funding and sources. But since they are a long-term owner and pay all the utilities, they definitely see the value. So yeah, that's the plan. It's completely set up for, and we did a little more than the minimum required for the solar ready in terms of running conduit and kind of setting up connection locations. We did like the next little step up.
Excellent. Right, and I think we had a question on impervious cover for you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I intended to touch on that in the presentation, but probably the biggest thing once you apply Affordability Unlocked, the next biggest thing that pretty much comes up every site is impervious cover, and that is not revised at all by Affordability Unlocked. So yeah, especially looking at the watershed protection modifications to impervious cover, really is kind of the next big hurdle. But honestly, we're finding enough sites right now that that's not a huge concern. Obviously, that is a bigger picture concern for a lot of people. The only thing where we kind of rub against that a little bit is that it does tend to push more affordable housing east. Makes it that much harder to put affordable housing west, where the Barton Springs zones you can get down to 20% IC. But it's a complicated issue, a lot of different factors on, but yeah, that's correct that it does not waive impervious cover, and that often becomes the next biggest limiting factor.
Great. All right, for Matt, were many of the former Chalmers residents able to move into the new buildings, and what were the provisions made for them while the new buildings were constructed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Housing Authority has a RAD program. I think it's called Residential Assistance Development, something like that. So part of our ongoing work with the residents of Chalmers, and we're doing this with Rosewood as well as Santa Rita. They have basically right of return. So and not only right of return, but the Housing Authority takes each case. They find them a place to live. If they're living in a 2-bedroom, they have 3 kids, or if they have 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, they're entitled to that same number of bedrooms. They find them a place either in one of their other properties or in a Section 8 property somewhere in town. and preferably in the neighborhood. They try to find places for people in the neighborhood. And then when the building's built, 100% of the residents have the right to come back. And so we actually saw a lot of original residents come back. The resident council, who was run by a lady named Mary Apostolo, she's this great woman who kind of ran the residents. She was kind of the queen of the residents, and she got people to come to the meetings. She was like advocating for them, and she was so proud to move into her new unit, and she was actually, weeping because it was, so much nicer than where she used to live. And she was really thankful to the housing authority for doing all this work. But yeah, definitely it's a huge issue that comes up. Is the first thing they hear, the residents hear when we're redeveloping their properties, like, what's going to happen to me? Job is over here, what's going to happen. It's a lot of anxiety. So the housing authority is really great. Sylvia and Ann over there are really great at talking through the residents and alleviating their fears and telling. There's a lot of also bad information out there. So actually, when we were doing Chalmers and now that we're doing Rosewood, there's a lot of controversy about historical preservation and other things in the neighborhood, a lot of valid concerns. So it's complicated, but people would be flyering the Chalmers development before it came down, saying your housing is being demolished for luxury condos, and they're telling you it's affordable housing, but don't believe them. It's a scam. And so we're kind of having to combat misinformation at the same time. So the housing authority is always on kind of trying to stay on message that, this is your home, that we're building your home. You're welcome to live here in your home. Your rent doesn't go up, all that kind of stuff. So, and they not only do they relocate people, but they pay for all their moving expenses. They box everything up for them. They relocate them. They move them back. So it's all kind of, they try to make it as comfortable for the residents as possible, even though it is just a naturally disruptive thing. So that's the best I can answer that. But yeah, it's something they're very sensitive to, and I think they're doing a pretty good job.
Great. I think that you were talking about that you haven't been using energy modeling as an iterative tool yet, but you're kind of moving in that direction. And I just wanted to throw it out maybe to all of you about your thoughts on using modeling to make design decisions and what metrics you think about using and how you prioritize that. So I don't know if you have thoughts on it, on where you're going with that yet, Matt, or if there are any of the other.
Yeah, I mean, we're researching it, and there's a couple of tools. I used to use Sapphira as a tool in my last office. It's kind of a way to kind of model something and test things with data. I'm a little cynical about that stuff because I just, it's kind of like how much of that is real, how much of it is, scientific. I don't really know where that information is coming from, and a lot of it repeats kind of intuitively what we know as architects already. If you orient something east-west and you have, awnings over the south side, you're going to get a better performance than if you do the other thing. So, but I think that was several years ago. So I know the tools have gotten a lot more robust, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I know Laura Perez in our office is researching another tool that she presented to the office that seems a lot more useful. So I'll try to put that in the notes later so we can distribute that information if I find out what that is. But we're in the baby stages of doing it. I don't know if Jason and Ken are more advanced than we are, but we're working toward it, and it has a lot of promise. We just haven't had it in our practice so far.
Yeah, for Roosevelt, because we knew what the priorities were and we knew kind of what we talked early on about the kind of efforts they wanted to make, it frankly didn't make sense to spend the money on the model because our geometry was so kind of set by the constraints. And we were lucky that we were mostly east-west anyway. We had all of the kind of the common sense items in, but we do modeling on other projects, especially on things where there is more flexibility in the layout, or there are things that we may not be as familiar with. So it's a little bit of trusting best practices, but also still questioning them. And when you have the chance to explore, and Aptus was our MEP engineers on Roosevelt, and they're a great partner for that as well because they have a very similar kind of mindset. And so they've also seen a bunch of models. They've done a bunch of different systems, and so it's really kind of relying on that built up knowledge over time. And when you have the opportunity to use the model as an iterative process, we definitely do that. we've kind of done it. We've done it both. We've done it all three ways, with the fully iterative model, with a model that's more of a documentation of what we already expect to be the case. Still learn things that way, though. I'll tell you, but sometimes there's surprises. And then kind of just basing on rules of thumb and best practices.
Yeah, we're in a similar boat. We've tried lots of things over the years, and we do have a integral QC QA process for both drawings and the design excellence. And we've recently, within the last several months, landed on the Cove tool as another input in our design process. And so it's just what it is. We'll take it and try and understand what the outputs are and weigh them against the other constraints of the project and use them if it is going to be a driver or a tiebreaker on the design. It kind of depends on what we need it for on the specific project. But it's a great, all of these tools are getting so sophisticated and interesting that they're all whatever works for the design process in kind of each office makes sense to tap into the new technology. And so it's really exciting to see the software developers getting excited about this too, and giving us the tools to improve our work.
And Cove tool is the tool that I was mentioning earlier that I couldn't think of the name for. So thanks, Ken.
Oh, cool.
So I had a question for all of you. None of these projects had to do anything more than a 1-star green building rating. Matt, in particular, I know we had a rather skeptical general contractor when we initially started this project, and an owner that seemed sort of ambivalent. I'm curious to hear from each of you what that story looks like about the value of a green building rating with your owners, and why you're achieving these higher ratings than what's required, and what's been part of that success. So.
Well, yeah, just real quick, I'll just say, I'll just reiterate the solar, I think, really helped with that. And like I tried to mention that it has to mean with certain owners and certain contractors. And the other complication of this is our contractor is actually our boss. So the way the contracts were written, like we were actually under the developer, who then was, under the housing authority. So and the developer is also the contractor. So it was a strange relationship that we've had to negotiate, and we've gotten better at it, and we're all still friends, but it's been this constant negotiation of push and pull, because we can't really tell the contractor what to do. We can only suggest and tell kind of via the housing authority what's best for them, and then if the housing authority, if we can convince them, then they can kind of help the contractor do what needs to be done. So it's been interesting. It's been good, and it's actually kind of worked out. But this solar, we had to prove both to the housing authority and to the developer that this is a money saving long-term solution. We're not just adding $500,000 just because we want to have a green plaque on the wall. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of what you have to battle, especially with affordable housing when the budgets are so tight. You have to justify every dollar. So so the urban siting, the water usage that we did, the water retention, and that also doubled as having kind of a rain garden and this beautiful green space for the residents, which is the housing authority recognized that as being a benefit. And the solar, I think those are the three things that kind of pushed us beyond. Like we have 2 and 3 stars. It's not like we have 5 stars, but we're really proud of what we got to do in the context of what we were working with. So I think those are the main drivers.
Yeah, you should be. Jason, or did you have anything to add? Yours, I think Project Transitions this was the first new thing they'd ever done, right? This was
their first new construction. They had been buying old properties and kind of limping along for many years and doing a very admirable job. I mean, it's a lot of work, but so they came in. So you're starting with a nonprofit, a very empathetic group already that understands, and they're looking at big picture health, they're looking at the community health, they think of themselves as helping community health. And so it was a natural fit to want to do, what they could, but having the long experience of maintaining buildings that are built to old standards, if we can call them that, they knew there was a lot of room for improvement. added to that, anything that was a life cycle cost, like an operations benefit to them. It's one of the benefits of, I think it's a nice kind of coordination between the priorities of these nonprofit affordable housing owners and the way the funding works is they get any money they get up front. They don't make money on rent. You show that it's possible to operate, but there's no profit involved. There's no ongoing, you're not raising rents. I mean, their rents are exactly tracking affordability, income levels. So you get your funding up front, and that prioritizes longer, more durable materials, longer lasting systems, and energy efficiency and water conservation just kind of naturally. So if you're already in that mindset and you're aware that you can take advantage of that, and you don't have the baggage of, well, this is how we always build apartments, based on, your kind of standard production, lowest common denominator, luxury apartments. It's a great mindset to start with. And we set a internal minimum of 3 stars. We're pretty sure we could do 4, and it was like, well, let's stretch for 5 if we can. But we said, only if in each case it makes sense for the durability, the quality of life, the health of the residents, these things that we said, these are the priorities. The stars aren't the priorities. These are the priorities. If there's a measure that makes sense that can be done, then we'll do it. And if not, we'll give it up and we won't really care. And as it turned out, we were able to get to that 5 at the end. And a big part of that too was with the contractors, Braun & Butler. They're actually a little bit more on this is a really weird project size. 40-unit apartments is actually really hard to find subs because, like, for most of the residential people, it's just too big, and for the multifamily people, it's too small. So we were in this kind of weird little squeeze. And Braun Butler was great in navigating that. And since they came on early in the process, that was huge for the ratings. And the owner said, "Yep, this is our goal." We were very clear about everything. They understood it. They have done it for institutional projects. And so it was, we were able to select a contractor who was then, on board with the ethos of the project. And yeah, it was a very, even on some where we've done AGB before, this was a unique process where it was really a kind of empathy and quality of life of the residents and the community as a whole first, and then smart, long-term thinking in the decision-making process for what we actually installed. And so it just aligned really nicely, and here we are.
All right. Well, I have a bunch more questions, but let me pick one to end on maybe. And this can go to all of you. Were there any material choices that you wanted to make where the life cycle costs didn't pan out? And were there any general sustainability measures that you wished you could have included, but just couldn't because of cost?
I will take that. We are very often planning for and never able to do photovoltaics because we don't have the right structure to benefit from tax credits because we are home ownership and we sell them right away. So we don't maintain those benefits. So PV is one of the things that we just don't have the ability to do unless it's completely donated.
Excellent. Any others? I had another quick question for you and Ken regarding materials, if you have time. People were asking about the hardy on the exterior and wondering if it was a soffit.
Yes,
Hardy
it is.
material?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
It is.
There was another question too about, oh, sorry, I forgot. Oh, the air sealing issues.
Okay, yeah.
Just real quick, we used a lot of foam and we had to pay a lot of attention earlier in the process to seal air sealing than we would have normally, and a lot of really specific detail and the second stage poly. And so it's just not something we knew would be an issue until we tried it. And so going ahead from here, we'll be paying a lot more attention to that on our next townhomes. Right, Jason?
We have a really nice sheet for that.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, with that, unless anybody has any closing thoughts, I think we'll wrap it up there. I'll take a look and see if there's any Q&A that we need to answer on the end. But want to thank all of you for taking the time to present these projects with you and congratulate all of you on some really fantastic work, providing much needed affordable housing for our community. All of these projects, like you said, provide a benefit to the community and the residents. I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. I hope you got something out of this, and look for that follow-up email. We do always want to get your feedback about how we're doing on these seminars and webinars. So we have a survey. We'll be dropping that link in the chat. So if you can take a moment to fill out the survey, we do look at them and use them to improve what we're doing and plan out our future seminars. Thank everyone for being here today.